Okay, everyone, welcome, and thank you for taking your time this evening to join us here. My name is Jeff Simon. I'm president of Social Flight, and we're very excited to be joined here with this very informative and exciting presentation. Bill Ross, Director of Product Support and Continental Motors Services with Continental Motors, will be presenting this evening. And for any of you that may not be members of Social Flight, we'd just like to let you know that we're here to promote general aviation. That's our goal. And Social Flight being the free mobile app and web suite that maps out everything from 15,000 aviation events to places to go to, $100 hamburgers, etc. And our whole mission is to support general aviation, to get people flying more, and to help all the organizations that make general aviation as exciting as it really is. And we couldn't do this without the support of industry leaders such as Continental Motors. And so that's why they are joining us this evening and why we're very excited to have them on board. So we appreciate you joining. There is a chat window, and there's also a window on your screen in order to be able to ask questions. Most of those questions we will address, and Bill will take care of at the end of the presentation, but we will view those as they come in. And also, we recommend that you use the audio phone link, which should be on your screen right now, so that you can dial in. There's also a way that you can do it on your PC. Following the presentation, you should get a message from us, and there will be a link where you can go onto Social Flight, which is just at socialflight.com, and see a recording of this presentation. So it's a good way to be able to follow it or tell someone else about it if you enjoyed it, found it informative. And with that, I will introduce Bill Ross.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and thank you for all that are attending this evening. I'm coming to you live from the Continental Motors factory located in Mobile, Alabama. So many of you out there that are listening to me probably hear the southern accent. You can't get much farther south in Mobile, Alabama. But I am coming to you from the factory. As Jeff said, I am the Director of Product Support and Continental Motors Services. I've been involved in aviation. Just to give you a little background about myself, I won't go into great detail, but I've been involved in aviation since I was about 15 years old. Learned to fly at 16 and 17, and have been engaged with it ever since. I've worked as a commercial pilot, corporate pilot, mechanic, and I've worked here in Continental Motors in engineering, analytical. I've assisted the National Transportation Safety Board with accident investigation and engine examinations. In 2002, I found my niche, I believe, within the product support department, and I am very glad to be part of this team and very glad to be representing Continental Motors. The seminar that we will be going through has two parts, and our common denominator here in this seminar is to try and provide, for those of you that aren't mechanics, provide maybe questions that you will ask your maintenance provider during scheduled or unscheduled maintenance to ensure that your engines and aircraft are being maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. We have a lot of people out in the industry that make their living telling you that you don't need to do some of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight. And they're very serious in nature. If I tell you to calibrate your fuel system, Continental Motors doesn't get a kickback from the fuel setup ferries because we made you do that or we recommended that you do that. We do it because we know that's best for the engine, it's best for the longevity of the engine. So many of the things that we're going to discuss this evening may change your way of thinking, but it's all geared towards saving you money, reducing the life cycle cost of your engine, and getting the maximum amount of time and performance out of your product. And a lot of what I speak about tonight is universal to the Lycoming engine too. The topics of discussion in part one, which we actually have two parts to this seminar. Part one tonight and part two is on October the 9th. But in the first part, we will cover fuel system calibration and adjustment, oil change requirements, and what oil changes, what we can learn about the internal functioning of the engine and the health of the engine based upon what we see during oil changes. We'll talk about cylinder compression tests, and I'm probably going to provide some information tonight to you that may change the way you've thought about our compression tests, the compression tests that our mechanics perform. And then we'll wrap up tonight with some details of product support and how we can help you, the end customer, out in the field through our Continental Motors Services arm. So we'll talk a little bit about that. In the next webinar, part two, on October the 9th, we'll continue this discussion and we'll talk about the importance of baffles and baffle maintenance and how the air flows through the engine. We'll talk about induction system inspection. We'll talk about maintenance-induced issues. Again, I've been in the business since I was in high school, and I've seen a lot of bad things happen to airplanes that are maintenance-induced. Believe it or not, somewhere out there is the world's worst mechanic, and he's working on someone's airplane right now. We'll also discuss operation, and I certainly would hope that you would log back in for that on October the 9th. That's probably one of the largest areas of controversy. How do I operate my engine? What power setting? How do I lean my engine? Will I kill my engine running at lean a peak? And of course the short answer is no. So if you ever hear the fact that Continental Motors is anti-lean a peak, that is totally false. I operate many of the company airplanes and I fly lean a peak all the time. And then again, we'll talk about some product support. Again, tonight we're talking about reducing life cycle costs and trying to prevent unscheduled maintenance. That's the purpose, folks, for doing scheduled maintenance, is to prevent unscheduled maintenance. I'm also an aircraft owner. I have 3 aircraft. I have an accountant at my house. She's a very pretty accountant, but when I have a discussion with her about a purchase order requisition for unnecessary aircraft parts, it doesn't go very well. She has priorities of our children being, going to college and things like that. She doesn't have the same priorities that I have with regards to our airplanes. So I try to minimize the expenses and unnecessary expenses that we have on the aircraft. And I find that by not skimping on maintenance, I will save money in the long run. And I hope that that's something that you take out of this tonight. We're going to jump right into fuel system calibration and adjustment. This is a very interesting topic. Fuel system calibration is one of the most important items of Continental engine maintenance, and it is by far the most often overlooked item of maintenance. I've taught a lot of seminars around the country, and I want everyone to ask themselves a question. First of all, and if we were in an auditorium and I was speaking to you, I would say, okay, raise your hand, folks, if you fly a fuel-injected Continental engine. And usually 90% of the room would raise their hand. And then I would say, okay, put your hands down. Now, for those of you who fly fuel-injected Continental engines, if you can, without a shadow of a doubt, tell me that your maintenance provider, at least at each annual, is putting calibrated gauges on your fuel system and adjusting it, please raise your hand. And folks, it's surprising, we'll have about 3 people raise their hand. Let me repeat, if you're flying a fuel-injected Continental engine, it is the most important, by far, item of maintenance that you'll ever do for that engine, and it is quite often the most often overlooked item of maintenance. We teach mechanics at our advanced technical training class. We run that once a month, and we've certainly try to do a diligent job in training the mechanics out there to do this, but you'll be surprised at the number of mechanics that don't have the tools and capability and training to do this, and it's simple, and we're going to talk about that. We'll jump into it. Why is it important, and when is the procedure necessary? If you're flying a fuel-injected Continental engine, if you receive a new, a rebuilt, or overhauled engine, the fuel system needs to be calibrated for your installation. It makes no difference that the engine just came from Continental and was run on the test cell. It makes no difference that the engine was overhauled by your brother-in-law or a reputable overhaul shop or whoever's touched the engine. When they tested the engine in a test cell, it had a different set of head pressures. It had perhaps a different exhaust system than you have on your aircraft. They may have run the engine with stacks instead of an exhaust system. Those things affect fuel system calibration. Anytime you change a fuel component, I just sent my fuel pump off to XYZ fuel pump overhaul, and they set it on the bench. They can't happen. They cannot set it on the bench for your installation. It has to be set for your installation. They can reference it to an engineering standard, and they can ensure that the pump meets that engineering standard, but they can't adjust it for your installation. And I'm going to go into why here in just a minute. Scheduled maintenance 100-hour, wear of components during engine life, anytime you have a fuel flow anomaly, or troubleshooting engine operation, we're going to put the calibrated gauges on it, and we're going to look at the engine. It's essential to cylinder and engine longevity. A lot of our customers have chronic cylinder problems. When we go and investigate that, we find that the fuel system has never been calibrated, and they've never had the adequate pressures that are set forth in our instructions for continued airworthiness. The correct fuel and air mixture is critical for both maintaining cylinder temperature and performance of the engine. And we can't begin to talk about lean a peak or cruising the engine if we don't have it set correctly. In the slide that you see now, you'll see a gentleman there. His name is Harmon. He's been at Continental for 40 years working in the fuel injection lab. He's testing a fuel pump. It's a very sophisticated piece of equipment, but all it does is look for a flow versus pressure curve. He is ensuring that that pump will meet all the requirements that we set forth when we engineered the pump. That's only what he's doing. Fuel system calibration. Now, during the webinar tonight, you'll hear me reference continentalmotors.aero. You'll hear me talking about our website. All of these documents that I refer to in service bulletins and service information directives, you can find free of charge at our website at continentalmotors.aero. So don't feel like you have to write everything down. But fuel system calibration can be found in the latest revision of Service Information Directive, or what we call SID 97-3. It gives the instructions and it gives the parameters for which to set the fuel system up. In the left picture, there's a technician that works in our department that's setting a fuel system up on a Cirrus SR22. On top of the toolbox, he's got a piece of equipment that's about $4,000. It's a very sophisticated porta-test. You do not have to have that. The right-hand picture there is a barber pole tag. Strangely enough, we put that on every engine and every fuel component that leaves Continental Motors. And if I could bring that out, then you could read that. And if we were at a seminar, I'd actually pass those around. All the cutting the brass tacks on it, it says, "Thou shalt set the fuel system up in accordance with SID 97-3, or the latest revision of the Aircraft Maintenance Manual, and use calibrated instruments. You'll be surprised, folks, at the number of people that take that tag, tear it off the engine, and throw it in the trash. It's very, very important that you do it. This gauge set is one that I made for our department, and it's one that I use all the time. It's a very simple gauge. You can get those, again, SID 97.3 tells you where you can get it. We machined a nice block so we could hold both with one hand, and you need some swivel tees and some things like this. This apparatus right here is probably about $300 to $400, including all the hoses and tees and things that you need to do that. And that's all you need. And the two targets that we're looking for is on the left, the unmetered pump pressure, which is what the pump puts out, and the metered nozzle pressure, or what the engine is actually receiving at the nozzle or at the manifold valve, what we call the spider on the top of a fuel-injected Continental engine. Also, it is very important that when we do this, we're also verifying aircraft gauge accuracy. If you look at this example right here, we did at Continental Motor Services did a Bonanza the other day, and we use a calibrated prop tack up on the top of the dash. It's reading 2732, but you'll notice that the ship's gauge is only reading 2600 RPM. That can affect fuel system calibration. It can affect aircraft performance. So these are reasons why we want not only the fuel pressure set, but we also want to verify gauge accuracy. There's a lot of people that tell you out there in the world or in aviation books and things like that today in periodicals that you shouldn't clean your nozzles. Continental doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, we believe that we do. We believe that it is necessary for you to clean the nozzles. I do agree with Mike Bush on one. And I can say Mike Bush, folks, because he's a friend of mine, and even if he's on, he knows that I pick on him all the time. But Mike Bush says, oh, you don't need to clean your nozzles. There's fluid going through them all the time. Turbocharged nozzles, I would tend to agree. Those are breathing filtered air. But if you look at the picture there, those shrouds, if you have a normally aspirated engine, those shrouds on the nozzle have a screen, and that screen has to be clean in order for that to atomize the fuel correctly. In this particular slide right here, you'll notice that those little arrows that look like hairs coming out of the that is air flowing into the nozzle to atomize the fuel. And if you've ever looked at an aircraft engine after a period of time, it can get very dirty and dusty and nasty and greasy. And if those screens become clogged, you may not be getting the performance that you need. And you could be having elevated cylinder temperatures and things like that, or lack of performance. Again, where do I obtain the information? Review with your mechanic, SID 97.3, or the latest revision of the Bonanza service manual. If you go to your mechanic and he's never heard of 97.3, or he says that Bill Ross doesn't know what he's talking about, then I would suggest you have a couple of choices. One is you can find another mechanic, or if he is your brother-in-law or something like that, in the interest of family harmony, you want to keep him as your mechanic, then you need to call us here at Continental, and we need to educate him through our school, and we'll be glad to do that. In fact, you as the aircraft owner can come with the maintenance provider, with the mechanic, and we often refer to that as couples therapy. So make sure that you review that SID 97.3 with your mechanic if you fly fuel-injected Continental. If he doesn't know about that, and he doesn't have the gauges, and he thinks that's not necessary, you need to get in touch with us, and we need to educate your mechanic and get him on board with us. Very important. Let's talk about oil change requirements and what we can learn from an oil change. A couple of questions that you really ought to ask is, did you cut my filter and examine it? You need to be looking for particulate in the filter. Has there been any change from the last inspection? And did you make a mess of my engine? Do you or your maintenance provider punch holes in a filter before removal? Many of you may do that. I know that it's becoming a chronic problem because people, it's tight spaces, and we don't want to make a mess. If you're doing that, I'm asking you tonight to please stop, and here's why. We have worked in our analytical department many engines that people are poking holes in the filter, and they jam a screwdriver through the filter. It contacts the filter media. It goes into the inlet of the pump. It's sucked into a small passage, and there have been catastrophic engine failures as a result of that because it starves the connecting rod for oil. Do not do that at all. I'm actually working with Tempest to construct a calibrated tool that can only go so far, and it will drain the oil through a tube out of the filter, but you never want to jam a screwdriver or anything like that into a filter. I have worked probably a dozen engines that resulted in catastrophic failure as a result of this practice. So please, hear what I'm saying there. I know there's some of you out there say, well, I'm not hitting it that hard, and not to be coy or to be smart aleck, but I ask them, well, when was your elbow last calibrated? So be careful about that. 992, SIL 992, Service Information Letter 992, is where you go to find approved oils. Our intervals, we recommend if you have a screen, 25. 50 to 100, whether depending upon your short or tall filter. Never exceed 6 months, and you should always monitor your oil consumption rates. In my airplane, I keep a chart of what point in time, what hour I added a quart of oil. Limited oil consumption is normal. I'm asked all the time, what is about normal? I'd say about average is about a quart in 7 hours. What's the maximum? There's a formula based on percent horsepower that we can calculate, but what it breaks down to is about a quart an hour. Or if you have to stop for oil before you stop for fuel, you're definitely beyond maximum brake-specific oil consumption. But a little oil consumption is good by nature, and the tolerances in the air-cooled engine, they will burn a little oil. It ensures proper lubrication of the cylinder walls and things like that. Oil consumption can vary from one engine to the other based upon its time, based upon its use, and based upon percent power and operating conditions. Oil filter inspection, you should be looking at that every time. Look at the filter and see what particulate. It is normal to have a little material in there. You certainly don't want to be reading part numbers. You start to see part numbers, you definitely need to ground the airplane. If you do find some abnormal wear, a more detailed inspection of what the constituents are in the filter would be required. One of the ways we do that is we wash that material into a Petri dish. That dirty plastic container, I know that looks dirty, but if you look real close at the slide, there's a clean Petri dish in the bottom there, and the technician is washing that filter with a bottle of aviation gasoline. He's squirting it as a spray and washing those constituents into that Petri dish so that he can look at it under magnification. And certainly our safety man is nowhere to be seen with that activity going on. Then we put it under magnification, and we can find lots of different things just by looking at that under magnification. We can see Scotch-Brite, we can see aluminum, we can see dirt. Dirt is indicative of induction system. Do I have an alternate air door rigged improperly, and things like that. But we can tell a lot just because of the magnification. If you have an abnormal filter, you can send it to Continental Motors, and we will look at it free of charge. Whether your engine's currently under warranty or not, you just call us at the toll-free number. We'll send you the paperwork to send it in. There's no charge for it. And we'll look at those constituents, wash your filter into that Petri dish or into a clean Petri dish, and we will examine that. If your engine's on oil analysis, you need to establish with the same oil analysis company at the same regularly scheduled interval and look for spikes or changes, relative changes over time. If you do see an increasing trend, then we need to be very thorough in our inspection of the filter contents as we go along. Okay, cylinder compression tests. I guess we're running okay on time, but I'm going to talk about cylinder compression tests. and probably change some of the ways you're thinking. First of all, should I be concerned if my compression drops below 60? Did you perform a borescope inspection? And did you perform the compression test in accordance with Service Bulletin 03-3? Believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that do not adhere to Continental's bulletin on performing the compression test. Let's talk about the compression test and what it means. In my opinion, Bill Ross, humble opinion, the compression test is an absolute bogus test. It doesn't tell us anything about internal engine health. It doesn't tell us about performance. It doesn't really tell us about wear, because it is not representative of what's happening in the engine under the dynamics of combustion. We're putting 80 pounds of air in the cylinder, and we're reading a differential pressure reading, and that really has nothing to do with horsepower or anything like that. It is a bogus test. There are some better tests I'm going to talk about just here in a minute, but the purpose of performing the test is to find the leak source, and that's really all that the compression tests tell us. Is it leaking from the exhaust system, or is it leaking through the intake, or is it leaking out of the breather? If it's the exhaust, it's got to be coming from the exhaust valve. If you hear it in the intake, it's got to be the intake valve, and if you hear it in the breather, it's blow by past the rings. The procedure for performing the compression check is contained in the latest revision of Service Bulletin 03-3. And to do that, you got to understand the function of the master orifice tool, and is 60/80 the real standard. And that's very important, folks. 60/80 is that. Everybody thinks, oh my gosh, the compression's 59, 58, the world is ending as we know it, and I've got unscheduled maintenance. That's simply not true. In fact, years ago, Continental Motors Engineering, we ran engines with falling compressions on dynamometers to see how low the compression would have to be able to measure an infinitesimal change of horsepower on the dynamometer. And believe it or not, the compressions are very, very low before you can detect a small change. We referenced that change, or that area of compression that compressions have to fall to, and that's how we came up with a master orifice tool. And that's a calibrated leak, and your mechanic must establish that leak limit prior to the test. He does so by using a master orifice tool. He sets 80 pounds of air on the gauge, flows it through the master orifice tool, and reads the leak limit on the other side, and then he's done with the master orifice tool, and he can perform the compression test. My compression tester, if I checked it, usually I check it at somewhere between 40 and 42. Yes, if the leak limit is 40 and I get a compression of 40 and your engine borescope is fine, I will return that engine to service. The borescope inspection is much more indicative of what's going on in the engine than the compression test. Let me go back just one slide here. The 60/80, I want to explain where that 60 came from. 60/80, if you don't have manufacturer's recommendations, or you don't have manufacturer's guidelines for working on their product, then you have to use, we as mechanics have to use AC 4313, which is an acceptable method, techniques, and practices for working on aircraft. And the FAA says if you don't have any manufacturer's instructions, thou shalt use 60, and that's where the 60 came from. But folks, I have flown airplanes with compressions 0, all 6 cylinders, and you would be very hard pressed to tell me if it had a difference in power between the airplane that we had that had 0 compression or the one that had 78/80. The compression really isn't a factor when it comes to horsepower. But going back to the borescope inspection, which I think is more important than the compression test, and Bill Ross tonight is not telling you to disregard the compression test and not do it. You still need to do it. But the borescope inspection, that's really going to tell your mechanic about internal cylinder functioning. He can see scoring. He can see metal transfer. He can see oil puddling. With training, he can look at the carbon deposits and he can tell, well, this guy runs lean to peak. This guy doesn't lean at all. This guy probably runs best power. That type of thing. And you do so by combustion deposits, looking at the intake and valve condition. This is all very important. I've got some pictures here that are representative of normal exhaust valve. In the picture above, that's a normal exhaust valve. It has 360 degrees in the circumference of the valve. It has a good, what we call a heat tracing or heat dissipation pattern. The valve is dissipating the heat into the head. The cooling air comes by the head and carries it away. That's how it's designed to work. In going from left to right, looking at the exhaust valves, and the extreme left, that's a normal valve, 360 degrees of heat dissipation. In the next one to the right, valve number 2, you can see that we don't have that, and actually the heat transfer is localized between about the 9 o'clock and the 12 o'clock position if you look in that picture. And then on the third one, going from left to right, you can see that the concentration of heat is about at the 12 o'clock position. If I saw that in your engine and you had a compression of 40, I would probably tell you we are ready for some unscheduled maintenance, and I may let you fly 20 miles back home, but would recommend that be serviced immediately to prevent valve number 4, which is a blowtorch event that's occurred. So again, borescope inspection tells us a whole lot about internal cylinder functioning rather than the compression test. So make sure your mechanic is using that. Again, it's SB03-3. You can go to our website and you can just type in a keyword, compression, and you'll see that pop up. I'm just about out of time, but I do want to run through some of our product support and factory service, and then I'll take questions. One of the things that we pride ourselves on at Continental Motor Services is that we can really serve a lot of your general aviation needs over there. And if you have a mechanic that's questionable or something like that, and you need someone to take care of your aircraft or do some of the services, we can help you. Whether or not you fly Continental or Lycoming, we can handle that. We were formerly the Matatuck branch of Continental Motors, and now it's Continental Motors Services. So we do lightning strikes and pop strikes and what we call IRANs, inspect and repair as necessary. And we do experimental engines and STC conversions. We have a state-of-the-art cylinder repair facility for Continental, Lycoming, and other manufacturers out there. We have state-of-the-art equipment and a factory-trained staff to repair some of these cylinders that are out there. We're also a diesel engine installation center. Continental Motors does have a line of diesel engines now that it has debuted, and we've done some conversions into the Cessna 172 with a geared turbocharged diesel, and we're certainly can do that. We also provide avionics services, so we are a true one-stop shop for retrofits, upgrades, and repair, and things like that. We can do just about anything with regards to any avionics. Most manufacturers, for the exception of Rockwell Collins, everything else we handle, and we radars, transponders, and the whole bit. You can also buy engines factory direct at that number, 877-777-1870. Lycoming, Continental, overhaul, Rebullt, your choice, and we can handle that for you. Also, we're your in-stock source for parts, airframe parts, Continental and Lycoming, ignition systems. Many of you may not know, but the Bendix ignition systems line, Continental has been manufacturing since 1987. So if you hear the word Bendix or TCM or Continental Mag, it's made right here at a factory in Mobile, Alabama. and we can support both Lycoming and Continental for that. So again, I thank you for your attendance tonight. There is the website at continentalmotors.aero. Our customer service numbers, toll free, technical support. If you have questions or you want to give that number to your mechanic, maintenance provider, we will be glad to answer any questions. That's what we do. And then, of course, if you need any parts for your Continental, Lycoming, or any airframe parts, give us a shot at 877-777-1870. We'd love to hear from you. Now, Jeff, I think I'm out of time. I think I went over a little bit.
Well, that's absolutely no problem at all. So we do have some time for questions, which is great, and we've got a few of them that are coming in. I'd like to start with one of them, which does have to do with what you were talking about with fuel system pressures calibration. And one of those is that there seems to be a lot of talk, especially in the Beechcraft community, of going above the limits that are recommended in the in that service bulletin. And if you could talk about that for a moment in terms of extra fuel flow, or saying that those may be conservative.
I certainly will, and that's a very good question. Oftentimes we do receive questions from mechanics, maintenance providers, and pilots, and they say, well, I have to turn my fuel up to keep my engine cool. And there's a lot of mechanics that do that. If you do, you probably are robbing your engine of performance. The horsepower and the type certificate data sheets that's predicated on the fuel system calibration that's contained within SID 97.3. However, I think there's and I don't want to start chasing rabbits, but it's a very complex question and very good. A lot of people are really believe that if the cylinder head temperature should go over 400 or at 400, that they're doing damage to the engine, that the strength of material of aluminum goes south at 380 degrees. Well, all that's true, but we took that into consideration when we built the cylinder, and so that's not really a problem. We don't want engines running in excess of 400 degrees, but we don't need to be obsessed with keeping it below 350 or something like that. And so a lot of people do that. But if you've got one that's running over 400 degrees, you're having to give it more fuel. It's possible that you may have a baffling issue or an airflow issue that we need to look at too. But just keep in mind that if you give it a little more fuel, you may be robbing the engine of performance. Another thing that's why this comes up, Jeff, is people who run outside, and we'll talk about this in the next seminar, the next webinar on October 9th, but those who run outside of the maximum recommended cruise. So if my maximum recommended cruise in my airplane is 65% and I'm running it at 85%, my detonation margin is reduced for safety. So a lot of proponents of that will tell you 380 degrees is where you need to stay, because as the cylinder head temperature goes up, the detonation margin is reduced, and you could, on a hot day, get into a situation where you could have a detonation of the engine, and that will certainly ruin your day. Again, I didn't mean to chase rabbits, but it's a very good question. It's very complex. We could do a seminar just on detonation margins and certification of engines.
Thank you very much. So we have a few other questions that have also come in. One of the questions that's come in is there any factory support for the A-Series engines anymore, the 65, et cetera?
No, there's not. That's a very good question, Jeff. We have a few parts, gaskets and things like that. I attended a meeting where we discussed perhaps making oil sumps and things like that. Again, I have an A65 in one of my aircraft, and I use Fresno Air Parts is my source for most of the parts that I need. They are located in the front flap of every trade-a-plane issue, and that's probably the best source for A65 parts.
Thanks. Another question that's come in from one of the attendees is what do you recommend in terms of preventing lead buildup on exhaust valve seats, and in this case it's NO 300?
In a NO 300, lead buildup is, first of all, one should look at the carburetor, start the engine, warm it up, take it around the pattern, get it nice and warm, come back, and slowly, at idle, slowly bring the mixture to idle cutoff. You should see about a 25 to 50 RPM mixture rise when you select idle cutoff. If you're seeing 75 or 100 RPM rise, it could be that the carburetor is set too rich, and that's a simple adjustment, and that can help that a lot. The other thing that a lot of people do, I do with my airplane on the ground, is I lean it on the ground. If you lean till you get an acceleration, lean till the engine starts to pick up speed, and leave it there, that can go a long way to avoiding that. What you're in effect doing is leaning the best power at idle, and it won't hurt the engine at all. The only danger in doing that is remembering to go full rich for takeoff.
Great, thank you very much. Another question that looks like there's a couple that have come in about this. You know, we usually think of the pan on the floor being only under radial engines, and so can you tell us a little bit about the story with things like even just a healthy IO550 and why the breather tube in many cases, either during flight or after parking it, still has a little left to give to the floor?
Okay, that's a good question. I do own a radial engine too, and it marks its territory. So I've got a little experience with that. But it is normal to get a little discharge of oil from the breather. There's a couple of reasons why that happens. Number one is the breather orientation. It's constantly seeing oil vapor during operation of the engine, and that vapor can coagulate in the low points of that, and once you shut down, then it drips out. It's not uncommon to see a tablespoon of oil or something like that after a flight, and it's usually not anything that one needs to worry about. If that starts to become excessive and your oil consumption goes up, then we start to look at the orientation of the breather. Is it correctly positioned? Is the oil filler cap seal loose, and are we pressurizing the crankcase? And sometimes the oil seal, the crankshaft oil seal, can leak and leak or ram air pressure into the case and also cause a discharge of oil. So the last thing that we do is look at cylinder blow-by as being a culprit, but again, through a compression test and borescope inspection, one can see if there's a lot of oil puddling and blow-by going on in the cylinder, and that can increase crankcase pressure and increase the discharge.
Okay, another couple questions that have come in. You talked about temperatures. What about climb out maximum temperatures where to be concerned? And some of these folks are talking IO550 in this case.
IO550's maximum cylinder head temperature is 460 degrees. We normally tell pilots to if you can't maintain 400 or below on a hot day in a climb, it could be that you've got a maladjusted fuel system, we've got a nozzle that's clogged, or we've got baffling that's incorrect, a host of things, except for those who who operates some of the 210 Cessna 210s, those are notorious for running 400, 420 in the climb with the IO 520. And it depends upon the airplane, but I think the target should be to maintain cylinder head temperatures less than 400. If it goes to 420 on a hot day in a climb, it's not the end of the world.
Okay. Well, we have a real specific one. Well, actually, first let me ask, we've had a couple questions about whether or not there's AMT awards credit for this seminar.
You can get factory an hour factory training for the seminar, yes, that goes toward an IA renewal, but I'm not familiar with the AMT credit. I'd need to be a little more specific about that question, if this is a program or whether they get some other credit. I can issue, if they'll email me at billross@continentalmotors.aero. Generally, any seminar that's provided by the manufacturer is recognized. It's recognized by the FAA, which is probably the most important, and I would think any other entity as an hour of continuing education units, and I can send you a certificate if you'll just send me an email with that request. I'll forward that to our training manager, and he'll get that done, and I'll sign it and send it back to you.
Now, Bill, you also mentioned courses that are available there. Can you for mechanics? Is there something? Can you elaborate a little bit more about the courses at your facility?
Yes, good question, Jeff. The course at our facility is what we call an advanced technical training class for the Continental engine. And while the title is advanced, we have a lot of owners that come and they get a lot out of it. We go through engine theory, we go through fuel system calibration, we disassemble a magneto, we internally time it, we remove cylinders, there's a lot of hands-on, there's a lot of theory. It's a week-long class. Starts on Monday. You're in class about 8 hours a day. Friday is about a half a day. And the beautiful part about that at the factory is if we're talking about fuel injection, we're learning about fuel injection, we're setting up things, we can then go to the fuel injection lab and we can see how the product is made, and then we can put it into application. You can register on our website at continentalmotors.aero and just click on the factory training and sign up for that. And again, I encourage owners and mechanics both to come to that class. It is very, very beneficial. Even if you're not mechanically inclined at all, you will still get a lot out of it, and you will certainly get a lot of questions that you'll want to discuss with your maintenance provider. And in the end, it will save you money.
And is there a cost you'd like to tell everybody about that?
There is a cost. It's $750 for the week-long class. We are known to comp couples, and I'm talking about mechanics and pilots, because we feel it's important. So if you've got a mechanic that you want to bring, and he's not, obviously after the seminar, he's not doing the things he needs to do, if you'll send me a note, we feel it's important enough, we will comp you into the class and get you in at no charge. But our mechanics who are members of our FBO services subscription service, they get 2 free slots every year. But I like to comp pilots and mechanics because at the end of the day, it's enhancing safety, it's enhancing reliability, and it dispels a lot of things that we get on some of the chat forums that are unsubstantiated technical data. And again, we're not trying to be difficult telling you to do or recommending that you folks do certain items of maintenance. We're recommending it because we believe it's the best thing for the engine and for the long-term savings in cost of operating that engine.
Great, thank you, Bill. Another topic that's coming up is, certainly with a lot of cylinders out there from other manufacturers, and there's ADs coming out, and we've certainly seen from a lot of writings of different folks, including our friend Mike Bush, about the risks of cylinder changing, especially when ADs will require all cylinders to be changed. Is there anything you can talk about that people should be looking out for if they happen to be essentially a victim of one of these airworthiness directives?
Very good question, Jeff. And yes, and I will cover that in great detail in the next seminar when I talk about maintenance-induced issues. One of the things that you need to ask yourself, those of you that are owners that may be looking at a cylinder change, is number one, does my mechanic, has he had any training? Has he performed cylinder changes before? Does he have a calibrated torque wrench? I, at 15 years old, started flying airplanes, and a buddy of mine that also works here, our product analysis manager at Continental Motors, we changed a cylinder on a 182 with a half-inch ratchet wrench. We did not have the technical data. We didn't have a calibrated torque wrench, but we were aspiring young mechanics from South Alabama that decided that we knew everything. Engine ran 35 hours after the cylinder change and broke the crankshaft because we didn't torque it properly. The main thing, yes, I know Mike talks about the risk, but if you have a competent mechanic, his calibrated torque wrenches, and he has the technical data to be working on your engine, which is what we're talking about tonight. These are the questions that one needs to ask. Do you subscribe to Continental's technical data? Do you have the latest torque specifications from Continental Motors? If he doesn't, you can rest assured that now you're playing with a live grenade. But if your mechanic has done the work before, and he can show you that he has a calibrated torque wrench and it's calibrated on a regularly scheduled basis, and that he has the subscriptions and technical data to be working on the airplane, then these items of maintenance are performed daily without any problem.
Okay. Now, we're getting close to the end, but we've had quite a few questions also about what your thoughts are on oils themselves, meaning brand, type, synthetic versus mineral, etc.
The mineral oil we recommend for the first 25 hours on new or rebuilt or overhauled engines, or a top overhaul, or even if you repair one cylinder and it's rehoned and re-ringed, we recommend mineral oil for the first 25 hours. And then your brand of ashless dispersant. Service Information Letter 99-2, again available at our website, talks about the mil specs required for aviation oils in the Continental engine. Most all of the top brands out there are very good oils. I don't have one brand over the other. I can tell you that all of my airplanes are on Aeroshell, and the reason for that is because it's readily available anywhere I go, and it is fully compatible. If they don't have ashless dispersant, I can put mineral oil in. If they don't have straight weight, I can put multi-grade in, and they're fully compatible, and you usually find those at all airports. That's the only reason, and I'm not endorsing Aeroshell by any stretch. It's just it meets the mil specs, and I find it at all airports. But when in doubt or question, use SIL 99-2 and make sure that the oil that you're thinking about using does meet that specification. I'll also comment on one thing with regards to additives. A lot of times we're asked about cam guard and some of these additives, and I don't need to tell you that weekly or monthly there's a guy that comes to the Continental Motors gate that's got the answer, the snake oil that's going to make everybody's engine run forever. We find some credibility in CamGuard product, and in fact, I have led a study and engaged in a study with CamGuard at Continental Motor Services. Every engine that's at Continental Motor Services that's going out now back to a customer, either repaired, overhauled, or whatnot, it's both Lycoming and Continental. They have the option to put their engines on this CamGuard study. CamGuard has supplied the product and the oil analysis kits. We drew up very specific items of maintenance that they'll have to perform along the way on this test. We will pull some of these engines back and do representative condition inspections where we mic everything, and also so some of these participants will get free engines at 500 or 700, depending upon how they're picked, to evaluate the benefits of CamGuard. This should be about an 18-month study. Again, we're asked all the time, can I put CamGuard on my engine? Well, it's an FAA-approved product. Continental doesn't approve it simply because we haven't tested it. Does that mean it's a bad product? Not at all. I've heard a lot of good things about it from owners, but in my world, I had to really bore down in the engineering and all with the effects of CamGuard, both bad and good. I haven't found any bad, and I think that there is some promise. So we've engaged in that test, and I believe in the next 18 months you'll see CamGuard as an approved lubricant on our SIL 99-2.
Excellent, and that's of course good to hear because CamGuard's also a partner of ours here at Social Flight, so we like what they're doing as well. Another one that we get questions here has to do with the spark plugs themselves, and if you could comment a little bit on massive versus fine wires.
I have massives in my airplanes, and of course I have 2 kids in college too, so that's one of the reasons why probably I use them. We offer fine wire plugs in a lot of our engines as standard equipment, and we'll certainly spec an engine that way if an owner decides. They are expensive. But I have had a lot of owners, particularly some of our fleet operators, that tell us that they get more life out of the fine wires than they do the massives. But in my world, I have to get a lot more time out of those than the massives. You know, simply for the difference in economics. I've got to fly them 3 times as much because oftentimes they can be 3 times as much in cost, but I've had a lot of good people promise or give us a lot of promise as far as the longevity, less lead fouling and oil fouling, things like that. However, we've not seen any measurable performance change in the fine wires versus the massive plugs. Now, I've had guys tell me that oh gosh, I got 20 more horsepower. Well, yeah, they just spent the money on the plugs, so quite naturally they're going to say that they got the horsepower, but we've not seen it on any of our testing.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Bill. We're at the end of our time. It's certainly been, at least for my part, extremely informative, and we're really looking forward to your next presentation, which will be on October 9th. And for everyone who's in attendance, that you can look to Social Flight, again, the mobile app free, and socialflight.com, and for an entire series of presentations like this one from a variety of our partners here at Social Flight. And that includes presentations coming up from Sennheiser, Avidyne, Champion, AOPA Insurance, and many others, including Lightspeed, Spencer, and CamGuard. And so we're really looking at using this as a great educational channel for all of us to learn more, to support general aviation, and to keep us all flying. So thank you again, Bill. I really do appreciate it. And do you have any follow-up contact information for anybody who would like to reach out? We certainly probably didn't touch everybody's questions.
Yes, absolutely. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I really enjoyed that. I would encourage people to come to the one on October 9th. Again, we're going to get deeper into engine operation, lean a peak, and the dynamics that are happening during engine leaning, and that's very very interesting. But you can contact us at the numbers given there on the screen, the technical support line. The email address, Continental Motors Factory Service Center, CMFSC at continentalmotors.aero is another place that you can get questions answered. My email is there too. However, I wear many hats, although I only get one check, one paycheck. I wear many hats. But if you want a timely response, I'll try to get to it as quickly as I can, but if I don't get to it immediately, send it to that Continental Motors, that CMFSC at continentalmotors.aero, and one of the many technical service representatives that we have can answer. And the people that we employ here for technical service reps are people like me. They're aircraft owners. They've lived their life for this business, and are very competent, and we really have a good group of people that are very technically oriented and can answer just about any question that one would come up with.
Excellent. And for everyone who's in attendance, we have recorded this presentation, and following a short processing period, the presentation recording will be available on Social Flight simply by going to the event itself, and you can actually go back in time in Social Flight in order to see the event. But a link will go out to everyone who is within attendance that'll link directly to that event in Social Flight with the recording. So hopefully that'll help, and we will see you all on the 9th, as well as a number of other presentations coming up. Thank you again. Thank you, Bill, so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeff. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.